strategy is nothing without execution.
True.
You can have great PowerPoints, great postcards, great t-shirts, great cups, great posters. You can have amazing things like that look fantastic, but if your team aren't capable to execute on that strategy, then most strategies are going to fail.
Hi Charles. So how would you describe the current landscape of workforce planning, considering the dynamic changes in the business environment?
I think, Ben, you hit the nail on the head. It's incredibly challenging at the moment. I mean, matching talent to strategy is not a new thing. That's been around forever, you know. But I think what's changed considerably is the environments that most of our companies operate in, so most organisations operate in. That environment is changing so rapidly that if ever sort of workforce planning was a challenge before, I think it's an even bigger headache today to make sure you've got your sort of future set and ready to be able to develop and execute whatever your organisational strategy is with the right talent at the right place, at the right cost, at the right time. So I think, in short, it is more challenging today than it ever has been.
So Charles, maybe you can share with us what are the key challenges organisations are facing in workforce planning today?
Yeah, so again, like most organisations, we go through a fairly similar loop in terms of, at least on an annual basis, but more dynamically these days. But starting off with what's your strategy? So, you know, as the old adage goes, structure follows strategy, not the other way around. So the first thing we need, certainly from a post-Malaysia perspective, the first thing we focused on was what is our strategy, what's our 1, 3, 5 year strategy. And then we looked, okay, from workforce perspective, how does our current workforce set up both culturally, behaviourally, and skill set wise? And I think all three things are really relevant. I think culture is becoming even more relevant in some respects. So that's the second piece. So what is your current organisation? What's your current capability? Then we go through sort of an exercise where we look at gaps and trying to identify, okay, what are the gaps to deliver on that strategy? Which is different by different functions. I think that's probably more acute today than it ever has been. I'm going to talk a bit about digitalization, but you know, sort of 5-10 years ago, digitalization wasn't so relevant as it is today. So I think that's really changed the landscape quite considerably. And then it's about putting in practice some sort of action plan. And what's really fascinating, you know, this is my third time working in Malaysia, and you know, back in 2002 when I first came in, you know, skill sets or capability was a subject then, as it is today, exactly the same as today. But I think today it's a little bit different. You know, there is a greater need for experiential capability. And what I mean by that is, if you look at some of the sort of the big ticket items that are going on sort of in terms of organizational strategy, just take some of the big ones, you know, ChatGPT or sustainability or digitalization. You look at those sort of things, which again, as I said, are much more prevalent today than they were maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago. One of the gaps that we have in Malaysia, and certainly from a post-Malaysia perspective, is having people that have actually done that. So if we're talking, for example, I'll give you a real life example. We're going through a huge transformation as an organisation which covers every single function, but touching on sustainability as an example, trying to find people that have the passion, trying to find people who have the right behaviours, trying to find people that have the right culture skills, trying to find people that have the content around sustainability is really quite challenging. We have lots of people that love it and are very passionate about it. But in terms of having done it and therefore having that experience, that's not so evident. And I think that's true across many areas. ChatGPT is another one, AI, we've just started that journey. And looking for capable talent in the organisation or indeed outside the organisation, again, that experiential piece seems to be coming up more and more and more. So a lot of going back to that sort of process, and when you get to sort of action or creating your action plan, and, you know, clearly we want to leverage and develop our amazing team that we have. But there's a big piece there around how do we get them the experience to be able to satisfy and deliver on our strategy. So I think that probably, that experiential piece is probably one of the big key challenges for most organizations on some of the bigger subjects.
Right, got it. Pretty much clear here. So in your perspective, why is strategic workforce planning crucial for organizations in today's business environment?
There is, again, you know, I'm 59 years old now. I've been around the block on the sort of transformation journey several times, and a couple of things have stood out to me in previous experience. One is that strategy is nothing without execution.
True. You
can have great PowerPoints, great postcards, great t-shirts, great cups, great posters. You can have amazing things like that look fantastic, but if your team aren't capable to execute on that strategy, then most strategies are going to fail. So I think the first one is that you have to have people that clearly are passionate about it, clearly want to do very well, but have the skill sets to be able to execute on that strategy. That's really, really quite good. That's number one. And the second one is that, as an organisation, again, depending on which organisation you work in and where you operate, if you're going through a significant transformation, so coming from this amazing 200-year legacy that we have to being a fit-for-purpose going forward organisation, that requires, and if you look at sort of what's going on internally and externally in terms of that moving and shaping environment, it calls for different types of thinking, it calls for different types of content, it calls for different types of experience. So, for us, sort of getting the talent right, getting the people part of that strategy right, it sits right in the middle of our strategy house, is really, really critical, absolutely critical. So one is execution. The second one is, as any organisation thinks forward, having capable leaders, capable teams who can become who you want to become as an organisation is clearly very critical.
Right. Thank you, Charles. So how can organizations align their workforce planning strategies with overall business goals and objectives?
Well, I think there's plenty of models out there. So, any organisation could Google and copy and paste a process. So I don't think it's a little bit like I talked about before in terms of sustainability. I don't think there's necessarily a lack of intent. There's not a lack of capability or awareness of why it needs to be done. The difference is translating that into executional plans. And again, like I mentioned earlier, for us, it's being very honest about the capability organisation. Where is your organisation today? Where are your leaders? Where are your teams? What's their skill sets? And being relatively honest and critical about those, and saying, do I really have an organisation that has the bandwidth, the skill sets, the capability, the content, the passion, the culture? Do I have those component pieces to be able to take that organisation forward? And so I think for anyone who's listening to this and who's going to come to the fantastic conference that's coming up, I think we're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about that sort of honest view of where you are as an organisation, and then putting into place we get work streams, roadmaps, whatever you want to call them, but a plan of action that is durable. Again, I'm not the first CEO in post-Malaysia. There are many that have gone before me. All of them had great ideas and transformation plans, but the trick is keeping it durable, making sure you have that granular focus on follow-through. And so me, as an example, with my CHRO, we talk about this every single week in terms of where are we as an organisation, what steps are we taking forward this week, and every single day moving that organisation forward as best you possibly can so that you're future ready and future fit to be able to deliver on that strategy.
Right. Thank you, Charles. So what emerging trends do you foresee in the field of workforce planning, and how can organizations stay ahead of these trends?
There are many, and again, I think a catch-all, and it's a bit of a catch-all statement, but the world is moving so fast. If you look at sort of how business life has changed over the last sort of 1, 3, 5 years, whether it be COVID related or whatever else, it's changed already significantly, hugely, and it changes super fast. Your employees are changing, their demands of leaders are changing all the time. Your customers' demands are changing all the time and getting faster. The environment you operate in is changing, so environmental, for example, is changing really super fast. Your stakeholder demands, whether it be union, whether it be government, whether it be regulated, their demands are changing all the time. So whatever plans you have in place, I think you've got to stay relatively agile. But to your question, Ben, I think, the biggest one probably on our agenda right now, aside from the many other work streams we have around transformation, is clearly digitalization, ChatGPT, and we have a fantastic program in post-Malaysia which is called Weir, which is a cultural transformation program, and we're 2 years into that. And this year we're starting to focus and spin our attention towards how do we create future-ready leaders. And future-ready leaders for us are things like database decision-making. So much more emphasis on data, much more emphasis on data analytics, much more emphasis on technology and using technology to enhance what we do. And all the way through to the wonderful subject of ChatGPT and AI, which is probably the most prevalent conversation. And if you look at our functions across post-Malaysia, every single function, ChatGPT AI will impact in one way, shape or form. And that sort of embryonic introduction with an accelerating over the next sort of 1, 2, 3 years will fundamentally change how we operate as an organisation. It will fundamentally change how our teams need to operate within the organisation, and that requires a level of thinking around how do we prepare them for that, so that we leverage the 15 to 18,000 employees we have across the organisation. So, whilst logistics is still a very people-based business, so we still have to have somebody delivering letters and parcels. That will change in the next 3, 5, 10 years in terms of how that's, in terms of what automation will do to that. I was talking to some of our operators the other day that where we run our hubs, where we have 1 million letters and a couple of 100,000 parcels going through every single day, and it's still fairly labour intensive, that's going to change significantly. So the leaders of tomorrow will be required to operate operating functions using data and tech far more than they ever have done before. So that fundamental shift, and that's just one of many, by the way, there are many other areas like that, but that fundamental shift towards data, tech, automation, ChatGPT, AR, AI, visual learning, virtual learning, all of those changes are going to have significant impact on our teams. There's significant impact on what they do day to day, significant impact on how they think. And so we've got to start thinking about how we prepare them for that, so that we maximize the value that those solutions are going to create, but at the same time making sure we maximize the opportunity for our employees going forward.
Right. Thank you so much, Charles. I believe that it was all very concise what you've shared across here, and I think that is all for the interview session for today.
Thanks, man.
Right. Thank you so much, Charles.
Hi everyone, my name is Charles Brewer and I'm very proudly the Group CEO for Post Malaysia, an amazing post and parcel company in Malaysia. And I'm really looking forward to speaking in Bali in a few months' time at Build a Future Team. I'll see you all very soon. Take good care.